First was when Ankur called me and said, hey, we want to do this public forum. And a couple of us got together and went, really? Could be a fight. We could be rolling in the hallways and over this issue. It's pretty controversial, right? Because there's still a lot of parts and pieces of this that kind of touches nerves. But before we go there, before we get into that discussion, what I wanted to be able to do is to provide, I want to provide some backdrop. And it's around sustainability. It's not just the New Green Deal, but I like to look at sustainability as being a much, much larger picture, very much embedded, very much in tune with the New Green Deal. All right, so first off, what kind of definition do we use when we talk about sustainability? And what we tend to do is we say, oh, it's about having the right energy, right? It's about reducing our carbon footprint. It's about recycling. It's about all these different parts and pieces, but really it's a much, much bigger picture where we start thinking about sustainability across the globe, right? We live within a global society. We look at things globally. We buy globally. We travel globally, but all of these things define sustainability. The ability to take responsibility on all farms, respect for individual rights and the community responsibilities, recognizing social, environmental, and economic political issues. But let me give you one simple definition. If you're going to write something down, it's going to be this and one other thing that I tell you. We are all going to fulfill our needs. We want to have things in life. We want good things in life, right? As a society today, we're going to maintain our needs and be able to supply needs to fulfill our lives. The key to this is, in the process of us fulfilling our needs, well, let's not screw it up for the next group, right? So as we fulfill our needs, we have to make sure that future generations, and I can see one of them up there, the future generation to be able to fulfill their needs. So if you put your decisions around that context, right? If you think about what you do daily to be able to fulfill your needs and how that might affect the future, it changes your perspective in things like recycling, in things like jobs, in power consumption, power production, how you take care of your water, what you spray on your gardens, all of those things could have a long-term effect beyond our needs. So keep that one definition. If you did nothing else when you walk away from my talk, is say, and when I make a decision, when I buy a car, when I look at my house, things I do in my home, where I go to school, where I go on vacation, if you just put that, okay, how does this affect my needs and how does it affect the future? So here's the three big bubbles. The three big bubbles, what they call the 3 Ps, right? People, social well-being, planet, environmental stewardship, and of course, profit. Or maybe better said as prosperity. Because I worked 30 plus years in the corporate world, I lived in the world of profit, right? If you're a company and you're not operating profitably, what do you think happens? Well, you ain't a company very long, right? So this ability to work within these 3 bubbles is crucial. And the closer that you get with those 3 bubbles, the better you have the better you have of having a sustainable system, right? As you mash environment, people, and prosperity together, the more sustainable you get. If you blow one of those bubbles out of proportion, if you're only concentrated on profitability, or if you're even a company totally just focused on environment, those other 2 bubbles could get out of whack, and you could lose that ability to do the things of having transparency, being able to shift towards this 3P model, okay? Remember those 3 bubbles: people, planet, prosperity. All right. So I'll slowly move you into controversial issues, right? I'm going to slowly walk you off of this very nice, all three P's getting together, into this, all right, here's really what's happening, right? So right now, if you look about our energy sources in the United States, the majority of our power generation comes from natural gas. Coal is second, nuclear, and then renewables are grouped together in one little box that you say, boy, if you look at those others, we're really not making much progress on renewable energy. But look at this chart. Here's what we see trending in power. So look, if you're home plugging in your hair dryer or your iron or your refrigerator into the plug, you're getting your power through TVA in Huntsville, Alabama. So where does their power come from? They have a mix very similar to this. So you can see the decline of coal over time, and of course the increase of natural gas. Why? Why would that happen? Because everybody in all the power companies want to be green and they want to do the right thing. Thank you. It's cheaper, right? As we saw natural gas come down in cost, it was just natural for industry to say, let's go natural gas instead of coal, because coal is expensive, not just to mine, but to burn, to handle the waste, all the things, environmental issues that could come from it, that really represents risk to a company, that if you could go with natural gas, it's so much easier. And the benefit of that also is cleaner energy. So that's why we see the nuclear is nuclear. We're not building new nuclear plants. That's kind of on a straight line path. And you can see that renewables are starting to tick up, even though hydro, power coming from man-made dams, is still a majority. And let's take a look at that. So here's what your renewable energy is looking like, right? So as we talk about our desire to move away from fossil fuels as our primary source of energy to move towards renewables, this is the challenge we have. Hydro has basically leveled out. We're not building that many more dams in a system to produce power. But look at the growth in both wind and solar within the past 10 years or so. And quite honestly, right now, wind is growing at a faster clip than solar, right? It's seen a lot of technology advancements. Its price per kilowatt hour production is coming down, as is solar. So we're seeing wind is really taking on its sail. Oh, that's a cheap joke, isn't it? So we can see that wind is really picking up. Now, jobs. When we're thinking about the New Deal, right, the Green New Deal, that's part of it. You saw that clip in there where you'd say, what does this do? What does it do economically? Remember the three P's, right? If we do a New Deal and any one of those three bubbles aren't fulfilled, it's a good chance you're going to have a problem, right? If there's not a balance in that. So if you look at this chart right here, you'd say, wow, looks like solar and wind over the past 2 years, and it's going into 19, the number of jobs have increased radically, versus gas, where those jobs have been staying pretty constant, in fact, losing jobs, as well as, gaining a little bit on natural gas, but coal is decreasing because, of course, they're trending right along with that usage, right? So that's the picture. If you're a politician, or if you're an industry person, if you're a community, and you're saying, Huntsville, Alabama, what are we doing about energy and how's that's going to affect us? Hey, this is what the people are looking at, right? They're looking at what kind of job generation, because when you go to solar and wind, there's a lot of construction that goes with that, right? It's the construction side of that that's changing that. A little bit of an eye chart. So as I study the power industry, I always like to think about, okay, so the demographics. I'm running for office. Well, I'm not running for office. But if I was running for office, I would be looking at my field of demographics, and I would say, okay, in this industry, what should I be looking for? And as you can easily see, the mix of male and female, we're learning at about 900,000, maybe 900,000 jobs, and of that is predominantly white market for that, with minorities pretty evenly spread throughout the demographic, right? Mostly, if you looked at the businesses, how its location and where the majority of power is generated kind of follows that same demographic, all right? All right. Encore mentioned it before. This business of greenhouse gas and where we see it headed and what the impact. So I would assume that most of the people know about climate change or global warming and the effect that greenhouse gas has on that system. So as we produce greenhouse gas, like carbon dioxide, like methane, like nitrous oxide, those gases go into the atmosphere and they retain heat. So that's warming the planet to get the planet warmer because of that the holding of heat. So that's the mix. So if you're looking to make an impact on that chart right there, one, we are seeing a decrease. Good news, right? Why do you think we're seeing a decrease in greenhouse gases? Because of the mix of fuel. If we're moving more towards natural gas, burning that as a fuel, then those replacement fuels and renewables are emitting less carbon dioxide and other gases in the atmosphere, and we're starting to see the benefit of that. Now, industry-wise, if you looked at the different sectors of the economy, transportation, electricity, and industry are the three big boys, right? Now, you make a decision, you're going to change the light bulbs in your house, right? I want to change all my light bulbs. Great. You're in that 12% bracket of power usage, right? So if we get everybody goes home tonight and changes all their light bulbs, and say we have 50% impact on that sector, it's an easy math problem to see where do we need to spend our time and effort to see a big relief to hit those goals that they were talking about. If we're going to whack it in half, our emissions, you can see the industries that are going to be challenged by that as we looked across transportation, electricity, and industry. Who took the bus to get here today? Raise your hand. What bus is the first part, right? Well, I know half of you rode your bicycle. Okay. Tell me somebody walked here. Students? So, therein lies the change. When we talk about change, that's the change we're going to have to see, because it's going to take that kind of approach to our way of living that's going to make the change. So we can point fingers, we can point at that dirty coal stack, we can point at all these different parts of our economy, but at the end of the day, change is going to come from all of us, right? All right, there's the mix. So you can see that the big boy on the block is the carbon dioxide. There are, of course, a lot of ways we're going to have to trim that. It's trending right, as you can see right now. The trend is good in the United States. But many would argue that our production of products have gone to other countries, right? We see a decrease in making items here in the United States. We've shifted that to other countries, maybe third world countries that are making our products. And that all we have really done, or what we have accomplished, is shipped our carbon dioxide production off to another country to make our products for us. All right? All right, let's start the controversy, because we're going to talk politics in here somewhere, right? This wouldn't be worth a darn if I didn't say something about politics. So why are we still arguing this issue? Why are we debating if we are or if we are not causing climate change by humans? That is still an argument. As science, if I would look at the science of it, I would say that's healthy, right? I think we should always, no matter what the scientific approach we take, if you're a young scientist or heading towards that field, your job is to do what? Always question, right? Let's look at the data. Let's make sure that what we're looking at is correct. Let's do the right thing and continuously check ourselves and know that we're headed the right direction. Right now, according to the stats, about 97% of the scientific world believes that humans are changing the climate through our anthropogenic influence, our human influence on our burning of fossil fuels and other things. It's not, those data sets shows that even a group here that's one of the major groups to analyze satellite data here at UAH, even they are in that, what they call the 5 sigma level, where they have one of the highest levels of certainty in the scientific world. All right, how do we look at it? If we look at the adults who say, should the president and Congress take an active role as a priority in making policy to make these changes? And if you look at that, you can see we're trending that both protecting the environment as well as dealing with global climate change over time is starting to continue to be a higher priority. Now, you have to believe that within the political world, they're tracking this as well, because if your constituency says we want a different type of lampposts on every corner, and if you don't do that, you're not going to get elected, guess what? Lampposts become very important, right? So these trends are heading in that direction. All right. Not everyone, as you can see, not everyone in the community feels like it's affecting them. Even in this room, I'm not going to do it to us because then we're going to say, oh, look at that guy. No. Well, what if you looked in this room, all of us would sit down and start talking about how we feel the effect of this situation. How do you feel the effect? Think about that, because that effect, that influence on you changes the way you view this issue as well, right? So if you see that affecting personally, say 31% of the people surveyed said, yes, it is affecting me personally. The other 28 says, yeah, it's not doing it, it's affecting it, but not me personally. Then there's 40% that say, I don't see it making much difference here in the community. All right, let's get right down to the Democrats and Republicans. We're getting so close to them. Here's what the climate policies against political parties. If you look at the U.S. adults overall, the 49% say it does more good than harm at looking at the global climate change in general, right, to the environment. So that's about 50% of the population saying it's doing good. 19% saying, hey, no more harm than good. Another says, hey, look, 30% says, doesn't make any difference. Now look at the difference between the two parties. If you look at the Republican Party, they lean heavily over towards the one side of the equation of do more good than harm, down to 27%, versus the Democratic Party that tends to lean to 66%, or the majority, of saying that's affecting my environment. Almost the same for the economy, although it's a little tighter, right? The economy says 30, 30, 30, almost split down each one of those groups as far as the effect on the economy. And as far as the two-party system goes, Republicans lean heavily towards the very little help in the economy, and Democrats lead to almost the majority on the economy. Okay. We probably have everyone represented by these groups. We probably have some old people like me who are boomers. And then we may have a Gen X in here. I'm sure we have somebody in Gen X. So somebody going, yeah, I'm a Gen X. And then, of course, we probably have a millennial sprinkled in there. Look, that changes our views on almost every issue, right? Those age brackets change the way we look at it. So this was interesting to me, not so much Democrat versus Republican, but how strongly some of these issues fall within the Democratic Party and how low they are in the Republican. Yet, if you look at the one thing up here saying, okay, do we favor expanding the use of wind and solar? Very close, right? So those two parties see that technology is the right thing to head towards. At the same time, they say, no, the earth isn't warming mostly due to human activity. It's very low on the Republican Party and high on the Democratic. So in discussion, you would think discussion between those two of global warming, maybe the discussion needs to occur between, here are the technologies that make sense that we should be doing, because it helps the environment, it helps the people, and it helps prosperity. Okay, so I scratched my head on this one quite a while, thinking, okay, so this is supposed to be, as you grow in technology knowledge, as you grow in your knowledge of science and how things work in a different system, how does that affect your take on climate change? So I'll just be honest with you, I really wrestle with this. I don't know why the Democrats, as they move higher in their knowledge of science, would continuously go up in their belief in climate change. Yet within the Republican Party, when polled, they said that even though science knowledge increases, it doesn't change their view on climate change. So only thing I could take on this is science isn't really what's driving that behavior, right? If you look at the party or how each party views that issue, it could be tied to a different bubble, right? It's not the environment, it's not global warming, it's probably maybe more toward prosperity and social well-being and things like that, okay? The only way I can really make sense of that chart. All right, so if you take the big picture, if you take global and see United States, where is global climate change come within our view of threats, right? But there you see global climate change in the U.S. low in compared to all countries, almost as low as any other threat, versus something like the Islamic extremists, Iran nuclear program, and North Korea nuclear program, all running much higher than all other countries. So as a risk factor, as our priorities, you can see we lean towards these other issues, where other countries, other areas like Canada, Europe, Asia Pacific, Latin America, Africa, all of those are keeps that percentage high because it's 50% or greater in a lot of those countries. I don't think I'm done. I might be done. All right, so here's what I'll wrap it up. I did have a final slide. Look, there's things that we have to do, right? Please educate yourself on these issues. If you're going to go really look at a policy, understand what those issues are. Pick the two, what I think are the two biggest things in the discussion is one, understand what global warming means. When we say greenhouse gas, when we say greenhouse effect, there's one chart that you can Google, and it's a beautiful chart that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps of what that means. Look at that, understand that, so when you get into discussion, you know what those issues are tied to. The other one would be the carbon cycle. We're talking all of this carbon in the air, carbon dioxide here, there. Another one chart on the internet, Google a carbon cycle, and it shows you very easily where carbon moves from the atmosphere to the soil, to plants, to the ocean, where most of the carbon resides, and moves back through that system. Folks, this has been going on for a long time, dawn of time, right? So you have to understand those issues so that when you're in a position where you're discussing this with family members, you're at a cocktail party, you really have a good feel, and you can tell the difference in psychobabble and all this other stuff that they're trying to play on you. The other is engagement. My slide said grow where you're planted. No matter where you're at, you can do something. Don't ever think that you can't affect this big picture. Trust me, you can. It's just your ability to do what you can do in your community, right? Be active. Know what's the issues. If you can't throw glass on your curb because Huntsville doesn't pick it up, do something about that. Do something with the glass. Don't just back away from those issues and say, oh, well, I can't do anything about it. Trust me, you can do something about it. And then the last one is just be engaged. Continuously try to find ways. Policy is going to drive a lot of these changes. It has to. We're not good at controlling the common stuff like air, water, and soil. We've got to have some kind of regulation to help us. Whether it's this or a version of it, policy was going to be part of it. Be active in that. Get to the voting booth and voice your opinion. Thank you so much for your time and effort today.